stay awake, for every single 5, 6, until you are maybe 16, 18, it's quite hard to stay awake, and especially in the morning. Sometimes we need to get splashed with some water. Besides staying awake, I remember that early in my childhood, I've heard news about the second coming of Christ. All these predictions by people who allegedly said they calculated the second coming of the Messiah. And always when I heard those kind of news, I always had this sense of, I have to prepare myself for Jesus. I have to prepare for Jesus' coming. However, over the years and growing and maturing and learning more about my faith, I came to know about parousia, the second coming. This hour that nobody knows. This day that nobody knows. And to go back to the early church, the apostles had the idea of the second coming of Christ very well in their heads. And today we can be struck now by the many passages of the New Testament in which the writers speak about the parousia, the second coming, on how present this idea was for them, for the early Christians. However, for many of us, this idea of the second coming could be present if we listen to some kind of self-proclaimed prophet that comes to talk about it. Sometimes it could be that we draw closer to this idea when we face death, the death of a loved one, the death of a relative, a dear friend, and especially the young people when they see cases of cancer or accidents. Those kind of things might be a reminder of Jesus' second coming. Sometimes our senses awake through what we see in what's happening in the world. The many natural disasters we witness here, and we have the tendency to turn to Jesus. However, no matter how shocking the death of a loved one could be, no matter how shocking a natural disaster seemed to be at one moment, it seems that this idea of the second coming vanishes from our minds after this event passes. Other than the cases we've seen, the coming of Jesus is not present in our lives or our thoughts. The coming of the Lord is a distant idea, an idea we don't entertain for too long. However, we have to be aware of what the Lord is telling us today. Keep awake, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. For at an hour that you do not expect, the Son of Man will come. Jesus would like everybody to partake of God's eternal kingdom. And in his seal, he instructs his disciples and also ourselves to stay awake, to be prepared for his coming. Is there a need for us to contemplate a scroll or to read the news about disasters, to ponder about the second coming of Jesus? We need to maintain a hopeful and even a cheerful position in our daily life, knowing of Christ's coming. But how do we do it? Keeping present this idea of the second coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. Today, in the preface, we will pray, we expect the second coming, the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ with unwavering hope. So that unwavering hope should be in our hearts. Waiting for our Lord is a task entrusted to each and every one of us. The first step has been taken for those partaking of the sacrament we celebrate today. However, there is need to go a step farther. And that step farther is for each and every one of us to discern.